Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our session, Operationalizing AI Agents in A365. We're excited to have you. I'm thrilled to have us joined with our presenters today, Jimmy Ledbetter, Vice President of AI Strategy and Services at Quisitive, and Steve Corey, Principal Consultant and Microsoft MVP at Quisitive. Jimmy, I'll pass it over to you to get us started.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm really excited about this topic that we're going to be talking about today. So we want to start off with some real quick intros. My name is Jimmy Ledbetter. I am the VP of AI Strategy and Solutions. Been in the field of advanced analytics for over 20 years. Stood up data warehouses and data science divisions nationwide. Got to work with everybody from the Big Four to lots of other folks. So really excited. Started talking about agents before agents was cool. But that seems to be the topic du jour is what are we starting to do with these agents and what's Microsoft going to do? Now, in untypical Jimmy fashion, today is not going to be me talking a whole lot. I actually brought one of the smartest guys on the planet in here who knows this better than anybody. So I am so proud to be sitting here with Steve Corey. So Steve, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and then let's start talking about this A365 stuff.
Yeah, certainly. So while we're waiting for that smart guy to come in, I'll just start filling in. My name is Steve Corey. I'm a principal consultant. I've been here at Quisitive for about 7 years. For the past 2 years, hopefully three, I'm a Microsoft MVP. And my specialty, certainly since Copilot has come out, has really been about agent development, Copilot extensibility. And so when Agent 365 started to come out, I just started diving in deep to learn everything I could about that from a developer standpoint and an administrator standpoint. Still get some more things to learn on the admin side, but it's really, really cool what we've got to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited. And so just so everybody in the audience knows, so you have somebody on the partner advisory committee. So what I do is I sit down with Microsoft and we riff on, what is it that the next generation looks like. Steve gets into the deep side of it. So today we're just really wanting to have a conversation. So Steve, if we could go forward a couple of slides, you've got some really interesting statistics that I'd love for you to kind of share some ideas about when it comes to adoption.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we all know AI is everywhere these days. It's in all forms. Businesses are empowering their users to get more done. We see here there last year alone, there was just a huge leap in the amount of AI that business leaders have been using. And it basically at all the high levels of the org chart, not even mentioning lower down in the org chart. But um, when we look at the use of agents specifically, not just AI, but AI agents, that has gotten that's really, really accelerating. We've heard the word Copilot, for a few years, starting last year. Though, by the way, I think we all got a little tired of hearing Microsoft say the word Copilot. It was every few words was the word Copilot. Well, starting last year, they gave us a break, but now they're using the word agent because that really is the new buzzword. These customized AI assistants or agents are just making a huge difference in business. With Agent 365, agents are growing up into fully managed entities. Now, in this session, we're going to go, do a deep dive into what does that actually mean, a managed entity. But here's the thing: it's something that business has needed for quite a while now. I would say a long time, but agents aren't exactly that old compared to older things like SharePoint. But uh, let's keep going forward. So I
And
think
so
we. Mhm.
And so for our folks at home, so when we're talking about agents, the one thing I always like to tell everybody is when you're talking about AI, remember a lot of people are throwing a lot of stuff at AI and saying, I want you to do this. And Steve will tell you, he's heard them before. All my jokes are bad, but it's kind of like when my wife asked me to do 10 things. She's lucky if I do five. She's lucky if two are done right. So the ability for these agents is really, it's if you think about this as these autonomous team members who work together to solve a problem and become that personal assistant. That's when we start using that term agent. It becomes very impactful because, again, we don't want one singular AI flow. We want that super team. If you think about how you're doing this at home or at work, you don't have one person doing something. You probably have a team that's passing things on. These are these agents that we're working out for this. And so, Steve, you've got a slide next where we're going to start talking about like their personal assistants and then what's the difference.
Exactly. So I think we're all fairly familiar with M365 Copilot. This is what your employees use for their personal productivity gains. This is helping them in Word and all the other things to get documents created faster, get spreadsheets done quickly, summarize emails. It's a very individual type of thing. Then we look at agents. Agents are a different type of animal. Uh, Microsoft says there's a Copilot for every user, and that's because it's each interaction they have with M365 Copilot is personalized for them. So it kind of is like a one-to-many type of thing. Agents are a little different. These, instead of for personal productivity gains, these agents are there to transform business processes. So they're there to do the grunt work. They're there to do the repetitive work. They're there to do the things that take people away from more impactful work. That's really the key thing there. So the biggest issue, though, with them was governance and security. I've heard from a lot of customers that they have the Wild West. They call it the Wild West. It's almost like, when we talked about that with SharePoint, you had sites everywhere. They don't know who owns what. It's the same thing with agents because users are empowered to create those agents to start transforming some of their processes, some of their department processes. Now, it's it has been an issue for a couple of years now, how to tame this Wild West. It has not been easy before. You had controls scattered all over the place. Uh, so for instance, you had reports in the SharePoint Admin Center. You had other ones in the Teams Admin Center. You had other ones in the Power Platform Admin Center. Usually the same guy did not have access to all of those things. And they probably didn't know that all those different locations existed to check for things like agents. That's where Agent 365 is coming in. So Microsoft calls this the control plane for agents. Now I'm starting to think the word control or the phrase control plane is probably going to get overused here a lot soon, just as much as agents and then Copilot before that. So, but we're going to talk through what this thing actually is and why you really, really need to use it, because some really key people in your business will be glad you did. That's because it's addressing some big questions they've had. Are agents making my department successful? Just, testing, is this actually doing something good for us for all the work that we're putting into it? Are the agents secure? And more importantly, is our data protected? Will the agent I built run correctly and securely? They're tackling, they're hitting on some really key ideas that Agent 365 is there to solve. Things like security, compliance, return on investment, and just overall effectiveness. Is this a good venture? What we're doing with introducing agentic processes into our business.
So, Steve, as we're going through this, I mean, it sounds to me like you're saying like a lot of these agents that we're looking at, when you're looking at who those stakeholders are, is it a safe assumption that really that's that knowledge worker that we're working with day in and day out, and we're looking at how to augment our person with the knowledge worker to make them more efficient? Is that a really good way to summarize that?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. I mean, so many people in the business have a stake in uh, making agents successful. Like the security guy wants to just make sure everything is secure. That's their job. They want to make sure that what's happening, what these agents are doing, are secure. The business leaders just want people to be able to get work done faster and therefore get more work done and have it more consistent. So everyone kind of has a stake in the game with making sure that any agentic work is successful. So let's start kind of diving in just a little bit to talk through what the key features of Agent 365 are. I'm going to go into a lot more detail in some of the future slides because a lot of this is broken into some of the tools that you're already using, things like Purview, Defender, Entra, things that you already have in place with controls and policies that you already have in place. Agent 365 brings all of that into kind of a single pane of glass in the form of a dashboard. So you can monitor what's happening with all of your agents and your adoption of those agents as well. Something that has been difficult to keep up with before this platform rolled out. Now, one of the key things that we'll talk about is identity management. The the presentation we're in right now is called Agents in the Org Chart for a reason. These agents will actually show up in your org chart. You'll be able to see who they report to. It's kind of a wild idea, but we'll get more into that later. But the lifecycle management of these agents is also really, really different than how we used to look at agents. Before, we kind of deployed these things as like applications, and users would just use these applications, which were just AI applications. This changes entirely with Agent 365. Now users are actually going to be provisioning these things, requesting it. They'll get their own identity. They'll get provisioned automatically by the system with admin approval, depending on how you configure this. And
And one of the things I'm excited about when you're talking about provisioning this, and Steve's going to get into this a second, we're going to talk about like how they're registered and then like what all do we give them access to? Like now that we're going to talk about, Entra and how does it get access to 365? So I want everybody thinking as we're putting these agents in the org chart, you are legitimately onboarding this like you would a consultant. So putting that together, I think, is making that perfect assistant to your knowledge workers.
Absolutely. And it goes down to the point where you can assign licenses to these agents so that they can use things like Power Apps Premium or Power Automate Premium. Like you will manage this or you'll manage these agents like they were users. That's really the common thread that I think you'll find here that ties all this together, that makes it not necessarily such a brand new idea, but just a different take on the same idea. And the other thing was access management. So that's a very critical piece of anything agent-based, because every organization has the same concern. Are these agents accessing things they're not supposed to? I'll show you in this presentation how it handles that, because it's a very, very unique way. Now, taking a closer look at some of these benefits, right off the bat, agent registry. You may have heard Microsoft talk a lot about this, but this is a really, really big thing. I had already mentioned how hard it was to try and find the agents you had in your environment before. You had to go to the SharePoint Admin Center, the Teams Admin Center, the M365 Admin Center had one view that was partial, Power Platform Admin, to all these different places. That's not including Foundry, Azure, all these other areas where agents could be hiding that were created by developers, end users, or anywhere in between. So the registry is there to actually show you everything you have in your environment, regardless of whether they're even registered with Agent 365 in a lot of cases. I've got SharePoint agents that are showing up in mine, and I've done nothing different with those agents.
And Steve and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. I have to say that out of all of this stuff, and there's a lot of exciting things out of here, the agent registry is something that I am the most excited about because, Steve, you and I both have seen it day in and day out. Agent sprawl is becoming a real thing, and so understanding and securing and basically you have an HR department who understands where all the employees are. Think about the agent registry as the HR department for your agents. Where are they? What are they doing? Putting that all together, and that can, I agree with you. Control plane seems to be the word du jour, but how do we control where those agents at? So as we start looking at this, I'm at a customer right now. This seems to be something that we're all really excited about.
It definitely is. If you happen to be in the Frontier program, you already have access to most of this. Now, this is early technology. If you've never heard of the Frontier program, just think this is early access for AI. So things are early. Things are likely going to change based on customer feedback and wins and losses with this particular product. What's working well, what needs improvement. Things are going to change. But I think the overall concept here is going to stay exactly the same because it is well designed. You've got access control, the same type of access control you already put on your users. So we already know that that's pretty successful. This is extending it out to agents using the same types of tools. Visualization. Now, this is another brand new piece. Agent registry is brand new. The visualization will show you a graphical representation of every agent in your environment. Now, that's a very big deal. It's not just scattered dots. They're even grouped by the type of platform they're deployed to. Copilot Studio, Foundry, Agents SDK, all Teams, Teams specific, like the Teams SDK. Whatever that technology is, you'll be able to see them grouped. And even further than that, you can drill into that and get more information on what that agent is. What other agents can it connect to? All of that type of information is collected by Agent 365. And to give you a better view, like more of a control panel of what's happening in the agent side of your business. Then the interop piece, I'm a developer at heart. I like the interoperability. What this really means is if you haven't heard of MCP servers, they're essentially like connectors for your agent applications to connect to other applications. If you're familiar with API, another nerdy developer-y term, it's just an API for AI. That's really all it is. But as part of Agent 365, you'll have a set of MCP servers that Microsoft already provides. Between you and me, this is basically how agent mode in Excel works, agent mode, all these other little agent modes in the Office applications, they're really just leveraging these MCP servers. So Microsoft provides some, but you could add your own custom in-house ones as well, and then manage who has access to connect to those MCP servers. So you start to get that unified management system to control everything that deals with AI agents. And then security. By far, definitely the biggest piece and the most important piece when it comes to AI, anything, is security, making sure these things are secure, making sure you're watching out for threat behavior, just like you do with your users. Again, we're treating an agent like it were a user, essentially. So let's go a little bit further into governance, management, and measuring adoption. So let's start with the agent store. If you haven't heard about this agent store, you might have actually seen it. If you're in the Microsoft 365 Copilot app, you see on the left-hand side, you'll see like a thing that says all agents. That's where you could find some of these newer agents. You could find the researcher agent from Microsoft. You can find some of the new SharePoint page agents, a lot of that. Basically, this is your app store for agents. Now, that was already in place before Agent 365, but Agent 365 kind of kicked that up a little bit because now you can easily manage what shows up in there. Because by default, you'll see everything that Microsoft's put out. You'll see everything that your organization's put out. You'll see third-party agents. And a lot of customers just want to turn all that mess off. They want to turn off the third-party agents. They want to control what's showing up for their users to use. So that all really ties right back to the agent availability, because through that agent registry, you'll be able to simply block an agent or make it only show up for certain people when they go into the agent store. So IT has the ability to control what they see in that agent store all the way down to the user level. Another really big thing is lifecycle. With the lifecycle management, you can transfer ownership of an agent. Finally. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do this before. It's not easy. If you ever try it with a Copilot Studio agent, which seems to be, that's always the case. It's always a Copilot Studio agent. It's a nightmare. It's not easy to do that. Well, they're still in the process of rolling this out, but it's a one-button click type operation. You click on it, you type the new owner name, the backend handles everything else. That's a major, major deal because these agents are created by someone, and they're the owner. And at some point, that person may walk out the door and leave the organization. Someone has to pick that agent up and do something with it. Maybe it's just to delete that, but maybe it's useful. Maybe that agent is needed. It has to be transferred. So having that option is definitely a very big deal. You'll be able to see which agents no longer have an owner. Going back to that type of scenario, uh, it's no different than a lot of other content in SharePoint. Having a site that has no owner, that's all part of the lifecycle management, making sure things are addressed, like orphaned agents in this case. Again, you could identify that right off the bat and reassign ownership. I mentioned under access control, I mentioned you can make these agents show up or stay hidden depending on the user. So you can roll out from an organization perspective which agents should be showing up for different groups. So you have, your HR department may have their own set of agents. No one else needs to know about it, and they don't have to. You don't have to clutter up their agent store. You make sure that only the proper users have access to whichever agents you want. That also helps with stage rollout. Say, suppose you've got an intranet agent, or it's an HR agent made for employees, and you want to stage that out into larger and larger test groups until you do a broad rollout. This fits perfectly within that, and it's all part of how you manage your agent store. Now, this is the main dashboard for Agent 365. You may start to see this already in your environment, and it shows you just at a real high level, like how many agents you have, how many active users are actually using these things. So you see at the very top of this how adoption is going, the amount of time saved with agents. Now, that's using Microsoft Math. That's not necessarily the same as the way your business does math, but you can go in and adjust the metrics for how it calculates time. It does things like, sending an email will save X number of minutes. Well, you get to go in and tune the number of minutes so that you can get an accurate representation of the time saved. This is really where you start to calculate that ROI for your agents and to be able to tell, is this affecting us in a positive way? Is this helping our business, or is it hurting our business? Now, there's more charts and stuff on here to show a breakdown of the agents by the publishers, by the agent platform. Here in this case, you see Copilot Studio is the most dominant agent platform of all of the agents, which is the case a lot of times. There's a lot more information in here, and I'm sure it's going to get to the point where we can customize what types of information we want to see on here so that you get to customize this to only show you the things that matter the most to you, all of those key metrics.
And I want to double click on what Steve's talking about. So the ability to go through and start to fine tune those levers, is just the beginning, because we know that when you look at ROI, everybody looks at it a little bit differently, So, I mean, though, if you're looking at answering emails, it might be one set fee if you are a lawyer talking about it. It might be another one if you're in a different industry. So the ability to kind of fine tune that, and as it grows, really custom fit that, and then sitting with your AI council or your center of excellence and say, does it make sense for us to deploy this agent? Because not everything needs an agent, but this kind of helps you have that discussion to be like, hey, this is the most cost efficient way to do this, and therefore we should roll them into the org chart.
Absolutely. There we go. So this is essentially the agent registry. It's also in the M365 Admin Center, right alongside that overview, that main dashboard. And if it looks a little bit like the Teams Admin Center's dashboard for all of the apps, it's probably because they just ripped that off and changed the filters so it just shows your agents. I mean, if it broke, don't fix it, right? So this works really well to be able to filter down all of the agents. Now, this is every agent. This is that agent registry. So it's third-party agents, it's the in-house developed agents, it's everything, including SharePoint agents. So It has everything. And so you'll probably be filtering this thing down in different ways to be able to view what's happening in your environment. You'll be able to see who's requesting an agent. We'll get more into that later with the agent ID. So I personally really like this. I spend a lot of time in here getting more information about agents because you can just click on one of these agents and it'll instantly take you to the details panel. And from this, you'll be able to see who can access this agent, what capabilities it has, something you can't even see at all right now. You basically go talk to the developer and hope they're honest about it, right? But you can also see what knowledge it uses. You get a lot of information about this, what actions it can take. Another really, really important fact about an agent is knowing what it can do and what knowledge it can do with, or what it can do with particular knowledge. That's all really, really valuable information. You get it just a glance. But what's better than that is it shows you the level of protection applied to this agent. It's the stuff that you get from Purview and Defender. You can see at a glance what policies are in place to govern and manage that agent's entire life cycle. If you need to drill into those two, there's links to go straight into those tools, Purview and Defender, to get a closer look at what's happening with this thing. You'll see when we get to it, but you could get a very detailed activity log as well of all the different actions that agent's executing. So really powerful stuff. You have a ton of visibility into this just within the M365 Admin Center in this details view. So let's start looking into some of these pieces. Now, Agent 365 is not reinventing the wheel. I'm a little surprised it is Microsoft after all, but they're really leveraging some of the tools you already use, Defender, Entra, and Purview. They already have the infrastructure in place for managing users. We are just extending this out to now manage agents. So it's natural that we're going to be dealing with Defender, Purview, and Entra to set up a lot of these controls. Now, some of those controls are centralized monitoring to track all of the agent activity in Defender in a single unified view. You can drill down even further into this. There's out of the box threat detection. So already it's configured to monitor for really suspicious activity that the agent may perform, but also that the user may perform against the agent. So things like a jailbreak attempt, that would all be captured in Defender because Defender is now being empowered to monitor all of your agents. There's proactive threat hunting. So this is when security analysts can use the advanced hunting capabilities to identify any suspicious patterns and anomalies. Now, this is definitely getting into a much deeper conversation with Defender capabilities. I think this would be great, Jimmy, for a follow-up session to start to drill into like what does that Defender configuration kind of look like? What really specifically can these security analysts do?
And I agree with you 100%. I think that this is its own conversation. So again, we want to get everybody's feet wet, but I think, we're going to ask everybody to come back with us because it's going to be a journey over the next couple of months. So yeah, we'll talk to our folks, and I'm sure we'd love to come back and talk to you about security.
Excellent. Now, this is that advanced hunting dashboard. I think that this is where the analysts are really going to have a ton of fun because you can start to drill into all of the different actions that those agents are taking. If you want to know what this agent is doing out in the wild, you can actually see it right here. You can even see who created that agent. So if you want, zero trust is one of those things that it's a buzzword. It's one of the most crucial things right now with businesses. You don't trust anything. And you need to be able to verify that things are configured a certain way. You need to verify that activity is occurring in a compliant fashion. And that's really where this thing, I think, is going to shine. The security team is going to have a lot of fun with this. They don't have to wonder Are the agents being used in a safe way? They can actually make sure of it. So I mentioned at the beginning that businesses are already leveraging agents, but very few of them actually have controls in place to manage agents specifically. And it ties right back into a lot of the conversations I've had with customers and other colleagues that, like, we're concerned about what these agents could be doing. And until Agent 365 came along, you didn't have that level of granular control that you would like to have. You had it against the users, and you could protect your data and protect the data from the users with Purview. You had some of that stuff, but it was more user centric, right? It wasn't really agent specific. You may have agent scenarios that you need to treat differently than user scenarios, and that's really where these tools start to shine. Now we start to get into Entra. This is where I think some of the coolest features are going to exist. Now, we talked about the agent registry. Probably the other real big aspect about how Agent 365 enhances Entra, or Entra, depending on how you say it, is Agent ID. So this is the notion that every agent will have an identity in Entra just like your users. I'd mentioned you can assign licenses to them. You'll be able to assign things like conditional access policies to them. This thing will have a mailbox. Every agent that uses Agent ID will actually have its own mailbox. You could send it a piece of email, and then depending on how the developer designed it, it'll take whatever action. It'll respond back to you. It'll whatever that needs to be. It'll have a mailbox. You could send it a message in Teams. Now that's something we kind of already had technically. It just was a communication channel, but this is a lot more of a fleshed out Teams type communication. You'll be able to talk to this just like it were a person. And it kind of ties right back in there. We're treating agents like they're people. That's how this infrastructure is set up. So the more you think about that, the more it makes sense. What now they show up in the org chart, how they have a mailbox. I could send them emails. They're there to kind of work right alongside us, doing all the painful stuff that we don't want to do anyway, and doing it faster and more accurately as well. Now, the other aspect of this with Agent ID is how you're actually going to be putting these agents out there. Currently, you deploy an agent and allow people to use it, and then they just start talking to it like it's just an application. With Agent ID, it changes things quite a bit. Now what you're really doing is you're deploying an agent blueprint. Users can't go talk to that blueprint. What they'll see it in the App Store, and what they'll do there is they'll request to use it. And depending on if you have admin approval enabled or not, once it's approved, it'll create a copy of that. It'll kind of rubber stamp that blueprint into a unique agent with its own agent identity that is tied now to that requesting user. It will show up as reporting to that user in the org chart. So it's like their own little minion. It'll have their own mailbox, and anything it does, you'll be able to see. You can go back to Defender, and you'll see all the activity that agent is doing, and you'll know that this one person's agent that requested it. They're the responsible party, so everything traces right back to a human that is responsible for that agent. You'll be able to see, if you go back to the agent registry, just to tie that back to there. When you pull up that particular agent, you'll see how many copies exist, because you could have 10 copies, you could have 100 copies, where it's all been rubber stamped. They all have the exact same access control. They have the exact same compliance applied to it. All of the level of control that you have is applied to every copy consistently. And you can see how many instances you have of those agents right inside the agent registry. So then we look at the governance. So I'd mentioned all of those controls, they're applied to the blueprint, and they call it a blueprint just because that's what Agent 365 will be using to rubber stamp all of those different agents that are needed. You can have different policies in place for different agents so that you can adapt your security to how each agent is supposed to perform in your environment. Then protecting agent access to resources. So this is where we're following those zero trust principles. We're putting up those guardrails ahead of time at the blueprint stage before users could ever even touch this thing, so that it has the least privileged access needed for it to perform its job. Now, a common method of doing this is just conditional access policies. That's what we use for our users already, so that they can't go do things without being on VPN, for instance, or on a particular private network. Whatever those conditions are, we could set the same guardrails up for the agent, so that even if the developer tries to do something that's unexpected, those guardrails prevent it, which currently it doesn't currently work like that. With Agent 365, it does. Now you have that level of protection around the agent itself, its own little essentially walled garden, so that whatever it needs to access, it can, and everything else outside that garden, it can't even touch. So the agent registry gives you that unified view. It's mostly powered by that agent ID. That's how this thing can find all of the agents in your environment. The policies in place for Entra, mostly conditional access policies, but most other tools within Entra will be there to apply to agents as well. And then you've got role-specific observability to help make sure that people only access the agents that they're supposed to, but you will have the option, since these are the agent ID is actually a principal inside Entra, so you'll be able to apply additional things to that particular agent if it needs to be a little different than others. So you do have granular control over all of those agents because they now live inside Entra. So you're going to be managing these things like users. One particular thing to note is that Agent ID is already integrated with Foundry and Copilot Studio. So you do have to turn it on. I know you have to turn it on for Copilot Studio. You have to go in the Power Platform Admin Center, or your Power Platform admin does need to enable this inside each of your environments. But once that's done, your Copilot Studio agents automatically register with Entra. They automatically get their agent ID. Foundry, I think, already does that. I don't think we have to change anything in there. But because of the way Agent 365 is positioned, just on this same note, it's not, and you've probably heard Microsoft say this isn't just for Copilot agents. This is for any agent, regardless of where it's deployed. You could have something deployed in Amazon Web Services, and it could be using the Claude SDK, just for example. The Agent 365 layer sits above all of that as just a governance and observability layer, plus some of the interop stuff. So you can integrate in the Agent 365 SDK, and it can register itself with Entra, get fully managed by Entra, even though it has nothing to do with the Copilot ecosystem. Maybe it's not even running in Foundry. Again, this is completely running at AWS. So, but it helps you control any agent regardless of where it lives. Agent access. I think went a little bit off script on that, Jimmy, because we've already covered conditional access policies, automatically detect and respond to risky agent identity behavior. So this is just other layers of protection to watch out for the agents that are doing things that they're really not supposed to do. And that's when you can clamp down automatically, reduce some of that access, start alerting people that, hey, we've got some unusual activity here. Someone needs to take a closer look. The other neat feature here that's specific for all of your Copilot Studio agents is network level control. So there is a feature you can set up so that all of your network traffic for your agents is routed through global secure access, which is, I believe it's an Azure feature where you can do things like web filtering and other things. So if you have web grounding and you're concerned about what type of content is this thing pulling back for grounding purposes, you can apply network level controls to all of your Copilot Studio agents just across the board. So there's a whole different layer of control that you can do just for those Copilot Studio agents. Now we get into more governance and compliance. And this has been, I've had a lot of conversations about this because agents don't just answer questions anymore. That was kind of how it started. They were there to answer questions. They helped you find information. Now these things they're taking actions. They're modifying files. They're touching databases. They're deleting things, sometimes accidentally. So this has become a really, really critical risk for organizations. When there's accidental behavior that an agent does, it could be poor design by a developer. It could be malicious activity or misinterpreted a misinterpreted intention by a user, and the agent thought it was being helpful when it deleted that budget for a particular department, and they didn't know it for 6 months. Those types of things happen. So this is really where those walls, putting up those guardrails, it really comes into play, and where Purview is starting to shine a lot more. Now, almost everything in Purview is already supporting AI. I think there was one particular feature, I forget what it was, that didn't quite support it yet. But all of the major things here already support agents and agentic usage. So all of the sensitivity labels that you have already applied to your information, hopefully you've done that anyway. I know some people have kind of kicked that can down the road so that they can start playing around with AI, and then they realized, oh no, this thing's accessing all of my sensitive data and I don't want that. And then they have to kind of backpedal. So, obviously we definitely want the environment should be ready for Copilot before, and that should be ready for M365 Copilot before you start to really talk about agents. Because again, agents introduce things like actions, deleting files, accessing content you may not want it to access, things like that. But you've got a lot of the same types of protections here that you are already leveraging for everything else in your environment. You could audit an agent instance just like you would a user. Again, we're treating agents like they're users. So again, there's that same theme I'm hoping is starting to really click in your head at how Agent 365 changes agents. These are no longer applications. These are essentially AI users. And obviously live in the org chart and are tied to particular users. But one thing that's kind of neat that Purview can do, so this middle item here, it'll support all the different types of communications, agent to human, human to agent, agent to tool, and agent to agent. So it supports a lot of different scenarios already of how the agent could be touching your data, interacting with users, potentially making changes that you may not want. And then the Purview audit log, which is just a fantastic thing. It takes a little getting used to, but it is really, really good to kind of dig into, hey, what happens to this thing? Or, hey, what is this agent actually doing when I'm having it do this stuff? It's fully supported in the audit log. You can see what your agents are actually doing. So I have been rambling. Jimmy, you probably have got some things for me, but um, what questions do we have? What do you think that I've missed in this, Jimmy?
I think everything has been really, really good. I want to go about and I like the idea, just a quick recap, we're going through and the idea of the control plane, the idea of onboarding a- an AI agent like you would a normal agent. That to me is key. It's like, soon we're going to have the same um the same, interviewing process and everything like that, like we would for a normal agent. It's just we're telling it what to do. So, and then what I want to do is I do want us to come back. We don't have time to do this today, but definitely we're talking with some folks on the back end, come back and having a security discussion a little bit later. So, let me go through and I did find a couple of questions on, and I'll just read them out to you, Steve, because I've been trying to monitor the chat as we go. But let's just start with the broad the licensing pricing question, and I can take
Yeah.
that. Y'all, that's still being flushed out right now. Steve and I have seen some stuff, but until we're cleared to share, tune in next time and we will happily bring that back to you, like how we're assigning licenses and things like that. So again, we're want to err on the side of caution and come back to you when it's more baked out. So um
I can share
Bridge.
one thing that I've noticed already in just my testing. The because I've got a trial enabled. You may, if you're in the Frontier program in your business, you probably have this trial as well. But I mentioned you deploy that agent blueprint. And then from there, users will create an instance of that agent. The instance is what consumes the license. It's not the blueprint. So if you've got an agent out there that no one's there's no instances out there, or maybe someone had used it and they don't need it and they've deleted their copy, it doesn't use any licenses. It's only essentially those AI users that will be consuming those Agent 365 licenses.
Gotcha. All right, let me pull a couple more. So we'll take a couple of questions right now. So we've got a lot in here. So does this provide reporting for 365 agents and Copilot Studio agents? We've been able to gather reporting on Copilot Studio agents, but not 365 agents.
Yeah, that's been the biggest administrative burden is figuring out where are all my agents. SharePoint agents you had to find in the SharePoint Admin Center. Uh, Foundry agents you had to look in Foundry or at least Azure to try and find those. Nowadays you have to look in both places because it may not necessarily show up in Azure. Copilot Studio, obviously you look in Power Platform Admin Center. All of the things you had to look in Teams. Yes, Agent 365 will find everything without any other intervention, really. It knows about all this stuff. Now, if you have an external agent in AWS or the Google Cloud, your developer would have to kind of tie that in so it can check in to Agent 365 and let it know it's there. But beyond that, this would be your single agent registry to see them all.
And again, that one-stop shop for everybody's, because again, we got to make sure, a lot of people are multi-cloud, so but giving it access to that really to help you govern that piece of it, for me, again, still makes agent registry probably one of my favorite pieces that's getting ready to come out. So
Yeah.
Bridget came up, she goes, so does this expand editing capabilities for 365 agents? That's another problem we have. One employee creates an agent and cannot grant editing access to anyone else. This is available with Copilot Studio agents, but I avoid Copilot Studio unless a tool or connector is necessary.
And I agree with that approach. I don't go with Copilot Studio unless I need what that platform provides. I like Copilot Studio Lite personally, but yes, collaborative editing is not currently a thing. The most you can do is you could reassign it. Now that part is actually live already. You could reassign that to another person, but that's not really collaborative editing, is it? So Copilot Studio Lite is more for the smaller agents that typically one person would be editing. So no luck right now with co-authoring a Copilot Studio Lite agent. Maybe in the future.
Yep, to be continued on that one. So, um, Lori actually brought up a really interesting point on this one, and I think it's one that I see a lot of people. It seems like A365 is more of a tool to keep agents organized, making it clear where agents are being used and what do they do. But what about actually creating agents? What resources tools are available if you have no agents deployed and starting from zero? I've got some perspective, but Steve, I'll let you go forward, and then I'll go over the top of that.
Yeah, so there is an Agent 365 SDK, and along with that, there's a CLI tool, command line interface tool. The tool can create an agent, and no, I'm sorry. Um, the CLI will help you deploy, provision and deploy one in the cloud. What I personally use is the M365 Agents Toolkit, which I use for custom engine agents and other things. But there's templates right inside there to provision or kind of spin up a LangChain agent, a agent framework agent, all these different scenarios. So the agent for the agent builders, I look to VS Code or Visual Studio and the M365 Agents toolkit.
Yep. I think I'm the same. And honestly, I'd use a lot of Copilot Studio as well, just to kind of start to feel out like what does the agent even look like before I'm ready to go into production. So that for me is, just, does this even exist? Am I building the blueprint outright? And I'm finding a lot of folks really are taking that more low code approach as they start going into the SDK and the CLIs and things like that. It's just does it even work to begin with, and how complex have I made this before I need to get into more of a pro code solution?
Right. Or like the other person had commented, they start with Copilot Studio Lite and they don't go to Copilot Studio unless they actually need those connectors. Start with the simple approach and then work your way up to the higher complexity. For me, that's always what I recommend.
I agree with that. I'm actually at a customer site right now, and it's amazing what we're doing with like just even taking a step out of A365. Like the agent inside of Excel right now is absolutely fantastic. So a lot of people are using this for data generation, and where does that even start? So I agree with you. It's like let's start low and then kind of work our way up. But then when you finally identify what does that workflow look like, then now let's hire the AI agent. Now that we know that this works, let's hire them and let's put them into the org chart and give them the right amount of access required. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, I think we've got time because we're going to stop here and just we want to get you some more feedback here and then talk about what our next steps are. But last question, we're going to go with David. What's required to get KQL queries to work properly? I'm not seeing data populated in the AI agents info table.
That sounds like it's a purview question. That's one of those things that I need a little bit more time to dive into.
I think that's
Um,
fair.
and so I think that's a great follow-up session. I know I would love to have some breakout sessions to have a deeper dive into the purview side and the defender side, probably even the Entra side if people want to see that. So I think that's a great topic where we can bring in a demo environment and kind of walk through some of the different scenarios.
Nope, I agree with you 100%. I think it's one of those that, like I think we all see that this is probably something you and I need to come back and we need to have chats with folks here in a little bit. Um, so I wanted to just take this and just say thank you to everybody. Like Steve, you got lots of thumbs up, lots of hand claps. So the cool thing was we weren't talking to a screen full of icons. So we got lots of questions. So really excited about this. So I want to thank you for your time today. Like Steve's my guy. Whenever we work together, I always feel like I learned something from him. But are you ready to put the agents in your org charts? One of the things that we do here at Quisitive is we do provide these strategy workshops. As you heard, there's the technological component behind it, but there's also the business process piece of it. And really, for an organization to do both of these or to do these correctly, you need to look at both of those. So, right, you see on the screen right now is what we have where we can help you all out with, putting through our workshops to identify, how are we going to hire these agents and then put them into the org chart. I manage the team who does that. They do a great job. We talk about ROI, we talk about governance, safety, give you a roadmap for what does that look like. So love to work with you all on, how do we again hire these agents and then put them into the org chart. Um, So if you go to the next slide. Sorry, I actually so let me sync back to you. So okay. So really at the end, so if you can go back one slide, Steve. So again, just if you all need anything, there's the QR code here. We're going to be following up with everybody again, but like help us, help you to go ahead and hire these agents, put them in the org chart. And if we'll go to the last slide, I just wanted to say thank you for spending an hour with us today. I know it's over lunchtime for a lot of folks. So biggest thing is if I could get some emojis up, did everybody learn something today? If I could see some thumbs up, that would be really helpful. So Steve, I think you crushed it, man. I appreciate it. Love working with you through this one. So Steve, I'll let you shut us out.
Yep. Just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your day. I know we don't have a ton with all the work we have to do, but I really appreciate you being here. I hope you've learned a few things about this, and I hope you're excited about what's to come and how you could tame that Wild West.
Courtney, to you. So
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Steve and Jimmy. Keep an eye out. We'll have a part 2 to this webinar coming soon, sometime in the spring. But thank you guys again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.